Good morning again, everybody. My name is Saeed Khan, and welcome to yet another episode of The Week That Was from sunny yet chilly Detroit, Michigan. Certainly better than being on the East Coast, I think, this weekend, where they're going to get walloped with another bomb cyclone. By the way, if anyone is looking for a name for a band, I think Bomb Cyclone is not taken, and it would be great.
That is a great name for a band.
Isn't it? It's just perfect. All it means is a severe low pressure system, kind of like a reverse hurricane involving snow. So there you go.
Reverse hurricane is another good one.
Absolutely. In fact, if Neil Young wanted to say, something about rock you like a reverse hurricane, we would be great. We can talk about him and Spotify later if you like. Joining us, as always, our mentor, our maestro, Alan Langle from Deadline Detroit. We also have from Deadline Detroit, Nancy Derringer.
Hey.
And sometimes from Deadline Detroit, but also a fairly vast portfolio as a public relations professional and a civil rights activist. We have Greg Bowens.
Hello.
And we have from Weitz and Luxembourg, attorney Tiffany Ellis. Welcome all.
Thank you.
So we have a lot to talk about this week, and so I'm just going to go ahead and put my finger on the list and start with filling in the Breyer patch. It was announced that Stephen Breyer, Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States, affectionately known as SCOTUS, not Breyer, but the Supreme Court, has announced his retirement, saying that he will remain on the court until the end of the term in June, and allowing President Biden to have his first pick for the court. That has not gone unnoticed and unchallenged by the Republicans in Congress, and I'm sure that they are mobilizing in this midterm year for creating roadblocks on the way to that nomination. Where do you see this going, and who do you think Biden's going to nominate?
Well, I think there's two candidates already, two black women, one who was on the Court of Appeals and one who's, I think, a judge out in California. And they both seem very well qualified. And I'm thankful that Breyer has decided to step down, because next year, who knows what the hell is going to happen with the Senate. I mean, they could, cause so much problems. So why not do it now? And he had the sense. Unfortunately, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, it's unfortunate that she wasn't able to step down before, and we ended up with, a disaster.
I hope
that disaster would be Amy Coney Barrett.
Yes.
Okay.
The only good part about her is her name, Coney. I have some affection for that.
Is that because of geography or diet?
Both.
Okay. Just checking. Tiffany, how do you see this process going with the nomination and also the qualification of the candidates that Alan mentioned?
I'm worried, and I'm glad that we'll get a pick with the Democratic president, with Biden, but we've had challenges in this administration and Congress, to say the least. And I don't think that the Republicans are going to shy from this one at all. Justice Breyer has been a long, solid figure on my view of justice in the court for my entire lifetime, and he's going to be a hard view to replace. Certainly Sotomayor. We have some new justices that are great, but I'm worried that we're going to get a 7-2 vote here, and that's troubling. Had he done it 6 months ago, I think we would have been in better shape to get a more progressive candidate, a more fair jurist in the running. But I think it's going to be difficult in this environment for any Democratic president to get a liberal into the court.
So, I mean, there's also this whole issue about not really knowing if the Democratic caucus in the Senate is reliable with cases of Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. Do you see that being a possible issue when it comes to an up and down vote?
I would hope not, but it's certainly something that I'm worried about. With the infrastructure bill, we couldn't get it through, and that's because of Joe Manchin, and there's a lot of different challenges that we've seen in the Biden administration that I think are going to play out on a grand scale when it comes to a Supreme Court nomination.
Right.
But I think, I think when you look at how quickly they got Amy Coney Barrett in, it was a very, very quick turnaround. And I don't know why the Democrats can't can't have a quick turnaround on this.
If the Democrats do not act exactly like the Republicans have acted for the last 3 nominations in the Trump administration, they don't deserve to be anywhere close to Washington. I mean, let me just blow out the explicit language rating right here and say, Mitch motherfucker McConnell is going to try to pull another fast one, and we got to be prepared for it. I mean, this is really becoming they outright stole a seat, which Neil Gorsuch now occupies. If anyone is dumb enough or naive enough to think that they're not going to try to do it again, then they need to get a little bit of religion here, because they are. And if we're not ready to fight, then no Democrat deserves to be in Washington at this point.
But Nancy, and Alan, to your point, like, I've been a Democrat for a long time, and if I could count the number of times that I've said, if the Democrats can't, and then
I know,
and we can't.
I know, I realize that. I'm wearing my Kristen Cinema reading glasses here as a reminder that if that bitch doesn't fall in line, and Joe Manchin, I mean, we are not talking about the Build Back Better bill. We're not talking about spending trillions of dollars so that you can wring your little hands and worry about government influence, blah, blah, blah. I mean, we're talking about one Supreme Court member in a imbalanced court. I don't want to hear anything from those people about, we need a moderate. It's like, let him have whatever black woman he wants, and by the end of it, I want the Republicans to be saying, Angela Davis would have been a better pick than this one. So there you go.
Well, and I think, Nancy, you just hit the nail right on the head.
I always do.
let's in a very oblique kind of way.
You can't hit the nail on the head obliquely. That's the whole point. But go ahead.
That was an oblique hit.
Because Nancy's intrepid journalism, she also disclosed that McConnell apparently has some German heritage with that middle name. But
I wouldn't doubt it. But you know what? I mean, the fact of the matter is that this whole thing is already being set up like a dumpster on fire because of the issue of race. And if you see the people over there on the right-wing nuts over there, they're already screaming that this is reverse discrimination, that all of these highly qualified white guys are not even going to be considered.
Tough shit. That is how we need to start responding to this stuff. It's like, are you trying to pretend that Clarence Thomas was not chosen because he was a black man? I mean, I'm sure George Bush could probably, no, that was Bush 1, so he's already gone. But
look,
sure
Obama, when Obama got into office, he said, I'm going to get a Hispanic woman on the Supreme Court, and he did.
And he did. I mean,
there's nothing wrong with that. Look, God, I mean, Clarence Thomas is, he's a disgrace to the court, but that's a whole other story.
For sure.
So there's also allegations that actually he's a voice and a vote for one, that being his wife, Ginny.
Yes.
And her agenda. And yet at the same time, he refuses to recuse himself in many cases, which seem to be right within her wheelhouse. Is the court broken?
I'll leave that to the lawyers.
Let's hope not. I mean, one of the things that Justice Breyer has been talking about is the eroding faith that people have in the court, particularly the highest court in the land, because people refer to them as Obama judges and Trump judges and things of that nature. Well, I mean, since the court is created and people were being appointed, sure, why? Of course, they would be talking like that. But let's not, simply gloss over this issue of race, because it is going to be a central issue, keeping in line with the culture wars that the right has been making. And if Mitch, and we're all going to be saying, Mitch, please get a life, has his way, what's probably going to happen is that they're going to try and hold this up on the grounds of race, and that this is completely unfair. And for anybody that comes into that kind of situation, they're automatically undermined. You better believe that the people who are going to be put forward are going to be people who are super highly qualified, to be on the bench.
Right.
But this is part of the culture war thing on here, and I'm hopeful. I mean, I think that the president I think he's got a pretty strong backbone. At the same time, when you wonder about the guy who we're talking about here, Sinema and the
And
other
Manchin.
senator,
Manchin.
well, they will stand strong on this. I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think you can make a good argument for doing something that's never been done before in the history of the country. There's never been an African American woman on the Supreme Court.
Well, on that point,
I don't know why you would need to make that argument. I mean, the court should look like America, and quite frankly, if the Supreme Court is broken, it's more indicative of the fact that Congress and the Capitol is broken. We talk about judicial politics all the time, and certainly a president has every right to make nominations and to use the judicial nomination process in order to put jurists on the bench that they think will be fair. But unfortunately, it's become a political scheme in the last few years. When you talk about Obama appointments, you talk about Trump appointments. Trump was extremely successful by getting Article 3 federal judges appointed and confirmed. He appointed many people, some of whom are younger than I am, who have never tried a jury case.
The Federalist Society was successful at doing that. Trump had nothing to do with it. I mean, the Federalist Society gave him a list.
Right.
He just which one do you want? Okay, that one. He's the nominee. I mean, let's not pretend that President Trump has a philosophy about jurisprudence.
You're right, Nancy. I should not give him more credit than he deserved. He was a puppet in that scheme, but
let's not call him president.
If anybody's lost faith in the Supreme Court, I guess maybe it's him with his appointees.
Hey, can I just pop in just for 1 second? We have somebody who's been commenting, where is Ben Johnson? He's cut out of the frame. Ben is arriving later, so he's making a late appearance. And just,
the way your thing looks like
here.
It looks like a second frame there, but it's not.
Because of my.
So I think somebody thinks there you go.
Yeah.
So Greg, on your point about qualification, I mean, Amy Coney Bryant clearly was not very qualified. I mean, she really didn't have much of a paper record. She certainly didn't have too much experience. Can the Republicans really assert that as a reasonable argument to then try to block a Biden nomination?
Yes, they absolutely will. Just like they assert, why are we trying to, get rid of the filibuster to pass something when they did it on a regular basis, and they'll, I'm sure, assert the same thing again as it relates to this nomination. I mean, the hypocrisy of the Republicans knows no bounds, and in part they take advantage of our short attention span, where people, it's really Orwellian. It's 1984 when. We do the double speak thing and we know the truth to be true, but we say the opposite and accept it as truth. So
you ask that question as though there's actually an intellectual underpinning, and there really isn't. I mean, there really isn't. I mean, Saeed,
no,
I mean, this is everything now is done in the name of politics. And you said Amy Coney Barrett was not qualified. She was a law professor, correct? I mean, was she actually
briefly?
Yeah. Okay. All right. I mean, I feel better about like her brains than I do somebody like Clarence Thomas at this point, who is, I recall from 1988 or whenever he was nominated, he didn't even seem to want the job particularly much. I mean, he was in some kind of lower DC level court, and it was just like, they just needed a black conservative to replace Thurgood Marshall.
I think he was on the DC Court of Appeals, which is, I mean, a pretty powerful court.
Right.
But, I mean, ironically, there is something out there in the Twitterverse of speculation before Biden seemed to be more interested in the two people that Alan mentioned. One name being floated was Kamala Harris to get her out of the Veep position because knowing full well that she doesn't have a shot at the presidency. And save her some dignity. And the other one was, as a vindication and a redemption move, Anita Hill.
Oh, both of those are ridiculous, but never mind.
I was going to say, Bob Morgan here, one of our listeners, was mentioning that Reagan, when he was in office, wanted a woman. He said, "I'm going to get a woman," as Sandra Day O'Connor.
Right.
So it's pretty typical. I mean, it's just a matter of whether you want to announce it very early on or not, but it's, that's just the way it is. I mean, you pick somebody and you say, we want representation of this, we want representation of that. It's clear we've had representation of white men on the court, and we've tried to balance that out. So.
This is exactly why I am so contemptuous of these arguments that, oh, we can't pick people on the basis of their race or gender or color or blah, blah, blah. I mean, we've been doing this, like every president in my lifetime hasn't, looked to fill a slot somehow.
Right.
So there you go.
I look back fondly on the days when you'd see senators on the Judiciary Committee kind of zoning out as people were reading from law review articles and opinions that some of these nominees had published, and looking glassy-eyed, and then simply by unanimous consent going ahead and voting in a justice. I think things changed quite a bit after Robert Bork in '87.
Yep,
that's true.
And things have just never looked back since. Well, we have an issue of race a little bit more close to home, that being the situation of the Grosse Pointe Public School Board, where, and I think Greg, I think you wrote something about this, where a parent,
a Karen.
That's why I said parent like that. So
parent, yeah, okay, got it.
So it's a bit of a homophone that yet to be identified, mind you.
I know who she is. She was actually identified, but that's
okay.
Yeah, they do.
No,
they
she never stepped up and identified herself.
She didn't identify herself. But when they call, nobody cares. But when they call people to the podium, they do it like they used to do at my horse shows, where they go, "You're next. You're on deck. You're in the hole." So she's, they said, we want to hear from this person, this person, this person, and this person, and she was the last one. But I'm not going to out her here. Everybody knows who she is. But anyway, go ahead.
Well,
sorry.
I like the equine parallel there. Thanks, Nancy. But anyways, so she got up there and apparently was chomping at the bit to say what she wanted, and decided to twice use the N-word in her mind to essentially say, well, it's out there, and her son had used it and had gotten into trouble. Apparently, he'd used it on Snapchat, on a social media platform. But was being punished for it as something regarding school. And it seemed as though nobody really checked her on it ever since. Greg, I know you've written about this with a more extension.
Yeah, yes, everything you just said is true. And, she was like, yo, my knee. That kind of like, and it didn't really go right, in making the point. I guess the thing about it is that in the context of these arguments about critical race theory and what are our kids being taught and how it's so unfair to white males in school to be made to feel guilty about the sins of their fathers, that's the sort of like context in which this kind of thing, came about. I mean, she said that she had been part of the diversity committee. She even chaired one, claimed she chaired one once. And
black friends. She has black friends too.
She has black friends, and he has black friends, and the black auntie and all that stuff.
From Compton.
No, she introduced him to Straight Outta Compton.
Oh, Straight Outta Compton.
Right. But I mean, this is all against the backdrop of diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts have gone too far. And this was an example of how, like, her family is victimized, her son is victimized, and all this stuff because of it. And they're down. They're down with black people, and still they got victimized. It's sort of like the way that they put it. And this is just another example as to why society in general, public schools in particular, in Grosse Pointe, should not be engaging in these efforts to make sure that people are treated fairly, and that you can't run around school saying the N-word or the, whatever slur that you want to say and exclude people and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, there was a bus driver who made a comment on your story, and she said, I drive a bus, and a lot of the black students run around using the N-word all the time. And what's your feeling about black students and just black people in general using the N-word?
Well, I mean, we buried the N-word. My feeling is that, you know, the N-word was buried a long time ago, but it's hard to get it out of popular culture. People should not be using that word. They just shouldn't. Black, white, whatever. And there's no way to take a negative and somehow make it into a positive, loving sort of thing. And just folks just don't really know better. I think as they get older, they do. But I mean, you know, kids say a lot of stupid stuff growing up, inappropriate stuff all the time that adults know better than to say and repeat. I mean, the B word has gotten pretty popular, but, you know, I wouldn't go up to a school board meeting and start talking about, you know, that B, you know. No.
Are we talking bitch? Is that the word we're talking about here? Okay, I'm asking because
that would be the word.
As a writer, this is something that I think about a lot because, like you, Greg, I was watching earlier this winter. I was watching Issa Rae's show on HBO.
Yeah,
Insecure, which is an all-black cast. It's about young black people in Los Angeles. The cast is almost entirely black or people of color, and I think I heard the N-word dozens of times in every single episode. It was just the way people referred to each other, referred to themselves. And I have to say, I mean, I was kind of offended by it because you really get down to, and you shouldn't have to explain to anyone with an IQ above room temperature why it's okay for me, if I am good friends with Tiffany, to say, "Hey, bitch, how you doing?" You know, and not get my ass kicked. But it's another thing entirely for one of you guys to do it. Okay, even if it's meant affectionately. I mean, and so, you know, it's.
Well, we don't know Tiffany.
And so, you know, and so it's one thing for a white person to use that word with the hard R at the end, and another thing for two young black kids to call each other this with the softer A at the end. I mean, if you can't understand that distinction, just, you know, go home. But
which is exactly why it's really not about the use of the word at the forum. It's about the larger effort to try and undermine, you know.
Well, and this is the kind of thing you should be talking about in school if it, you know, but somebody would call it critical race theory, and that would be bad. But here's the other thing. There's a law professor at the University of Illinois who used the N -- version of the N word in a essay question on an exam, just in the last semester. So he's used it multiple times. It was, and I can't recall the question, but it was some, you know, it was some parenthetical, you know, how do you respond to this, blah, blah, blah.
Was it like a First Amendment, like a speech question, do you think?
I think it was actually a workplace. I don't recall. I can find it for you, but some student took offense at it, and the disciplinary system that handled this guy was positively Orwellian. You know, it was. I mean, he made a sincere apology. You know, he said, "I've used this in the past," and his argument was, "Look, if you faint at the sight of this on paper with dashes on a law school exam, you're not ready to be a lawyer. You know, you're going to hear a lot worse if you're, you know, when you're out in the real world and dealing with cases that may have this element involved." And I mean, that to me is just, we cannot pretend that to see it on a page with ends and dashes is so upsetting that that we have to discipline this law professor to some insane degree, but at the same time we can walk out of the classroom and call one another, you know, that the N word with the A sound on the end, and that's perfectly okay. So I mean, we need to find that balance.
I'll tell you one book that just isn't on any reading list in any high school anymore is Joseph Conrad's The N-Word of Narcissus.
Or Dick Gregory's autobiography, which I remember reading when I was about 12 years old.
I remember in junior high, in junior high, we went up to the bookstore. There was a little bookstore inside the school, and I was standing with a fellow student who was actually Asian, and the woman at the bookstore was black, and we had to get the Dick Gregory book,
Right.
called, with the N word. And so he sort of stumbled when the black woman said, "Can I help you?" And he said, "Yeah, can I have the book Negro?"
Well, it's interesting that we're talking about this after talking about Justice Breyer, because one of the more recent free speech cases, as it applies to schools, was authored by Justice Breyer in recent years. And so, when we're talking about parents using this sort of language as examples, and the way I understand it, honestly, I haven't watched the clip, but a friend of mine just texted me that this is a person that I know, actually, who was the woman who said this. And knowing that now, I'm not necessarily that surprised, but in any event, it's the way that I understand it was used. It was sort of like as an example, like, I'm not saying this, but like, this is what was said, and this is why it's not okay. And the fact is that nobody like put an immediate stop to it. Like, I don't know if it was because everybody was in shock, or they didn't know what to do, but what should have happened was that someone in that environment should have said, enough, like, stop, like, right now, shut it down, and immediately try to remedy it. And I think the last time I was on the show, we talked about we were talking about the Crumbleys, and we were talking about what happened in Oxford. And I think that this might be a bigger sort of statement about school officials not really knowing what to do in the moment when it comes to really difficult questions, and that's really what we should be counting on our school officials to be prepared for, right? Is like, what do you do when things go really bad? And when you're supposed to set the right example, you're supposed to know what to do immediately. And I think that, when we're talking about school boards and we're talking about superintendents and the administration of local public schools, particularly, they need to be thinking longer and harder about how to deal with these difficult questions in the moment.
Well, I mean,
if Nancy would have been on there, she'd have been banging the gavel, going, "Biatch, you better get out of here."
Okay, so that's a derivative of the word.
Can I say that? But and that was just in time for Black History Month. We had that happen. But ironically, on the Holocaust Memorial Day, you got these yahoos down in Tennessee who are banning a book on the Holocaust. Yeah. I mean, it's like, what kind of society are we coming to here? It's ridiculous.
So I'm glad
that was one of I'll have another schmuck of the week, but it can still
be a schmuck of the week, but we'll get to that. We are also joined now with attorney Ven Johnson from Johnson Law. Welcome, Ven.
Hey, everybody, how you doing? Sorry I'm late. I apologize.
No.
Put him up.
How are you, Craig and Tiffany? How are you? What's going on, y'all?
Hey. Tiffany, I think your point is well taken. I mean, we have a couple of examples here. We have the McKinn County School Board in Tennessee, which banned Art Spiegelman's graphic novel Mouse, a really Pulitzer Prize winner. On the auspices that the language was too salty and apparently there was some nudity. And the last time I think I remember reading Mouse, it was all animals.
Right.
So,
there were nude mice in there.
They don't look like they're like humanoid features with mouse heads. They're not actual mice, little mousies.
So we're talking cosplay now, Nancy.
Yeah. They're furries.
Got it. And then we also had a case down south of a school board banning To Kill a Mockingbird. Yeah. So it seems as though this is getting to be a little bit chronic. Ven, what are your thoughts about this? The role of school boards. We were talking about the Grosse Pointe school board regarding a parent using the N-word officiously at least twice.
It was disgusting when I saw the video. And she's lucky that I'm not on the well, first of all, I never would be, nor would they ever elect me. Secondly, or let me in city or village limits, probably. But I probably would have come out of my seat after it. I do appreciate. I saw not all of it, at least two, a white female and a white male who made comments afterwards. But yeah, hopefully we get better at this, y'all, and people start sticking up. It's what I'm dealing with, obviously, on this Oxford case is what we deal in any school district case, sex abuse cases. people just don't want to make waves. It's like, no, dude, she said the N-word. Make wave. Tell her to shut up. You know, and until people do that, I don't think that these people will ever feel like, you know, sooner or later they're going to realize that they're outnumbered. I really do believe they are. But those of us that outnumber them, we need to, you know, I remember that white T-shirt. I'm sure everybody in this show has it about the, you know, silence is white violence. Come on, y'all. It's time. We got to stand up and we got to say something.
I remember the shirt that said Frankie say relax. Does that count?
Kind of.
Okay. Well, Ben, you mentioned Oxford as did you, Tiffany. So a little bit of an update on the news out of the rather tragic and violent situation up there. Ethan Crumbley, the defendant in 4 murders, is planning to use the insanity defense. And the other news out of the Oxford case is that the lawsuit against the school, the counselors, and others has been filed. Where do you see either of these 2 legal issues going?
I think Ethan Crumbley has no reasonable chance at all for any jury in Oakland County finding him to be mentally innocent because of, or what is it, guys? What's the right word? Here's
Not guilty by reason of insanity.
Thank you. There's my
guilty but mentally ill. I don't know what they call him.
That's why I always defer to Fishman, because, you know, he wouldn't even allow me to talk. Right? What do you know about criminal law? Other than he represented me in a 6-week criminal trial. Nothing, Steve. Nothing. But I don't see that happening at all in this case. He was planning this for months and months and months, according to the Journal and the videos that were on at his home, that his parents obviously had the ability to see had they want to, or maybe they were helping him, who knows. But relative to the civil case, I think the civil case is going to be monumental, very candidly. I think that the overwhelming gross negligence of the 2 counselors and the dean of students, guys, they had a liaison, Oakland County Sheriff Deputy, who is in the school. Now, he wasn't there Tuesday. I think he was there Monday. But his office, they have an office right there. Never called him, never called the principal. And if you haven't seen it, I hope everybody doesn't just hear about the pictures that would be drawn. Please look at Ethan Crumbley's test, his practice test for quadrangles and triangles, and look to see him drawing his gun and a bullet and a dead guy with 2 bullets and blood everywhere. And my life is, you've got to see it, because you don't need to be a shrink. You don't need to be a psychologist to know, holy shit, something very bad's going on with this dude.
And didn't he text his mom saying, I've got issues? I mean, it showed that he had a requisite mental capacity.
Well, thoughts won't stop. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Thoughts won't stop. My life is dead, or it's just horrible. And what we got to look at, and where we're focusing in our lawsuit, is under the Michigan Child Protection Act. I got a bunch of lawyers. 722.621. Bowen, write that down. 722.621. Not even a question. Teachers and these school administrators are mandatory reporters of child abuse and child neglect. And when we think of child abuse, we think about either sex abuse or we think about beating a kid. And child neglect, I don't know what people think of, but in both of the definitions under that act, maltreatment, mental injury, lack of adequate medical care constitute both of those. This kid had both going on. And when the parents didn't respond on Monday, y'all, called mom, no call back. Tuesday, they both go in. When the parents didn't respond appropriately, and basically they were blowing the school off, the level and the indices of problem didn't go down, it went up. And they did nothing. And then they say, well, we wanted your kid to get therapy. Not therapy, dude. You need to go to an ER. You need to see a shrink right now. Straight up. Call 911 and let the people in CPS, you guys figure this out. Homie's not playing that. And this guy,
you said homie. Let me tell you something. If that kid was black, they would have had him, dragging him out of there in handcuffs. It would have been no question about it.
Greg,
Vin, I'm totally with you. Vin is totally right. These people need to be held accountable. I've been writing about it, saying it, screaming it to the mountains.
Yes.
No way in the world.
Yes.
Should those people, they should be held accountable. That school shouldn't even be open, man.
All right, let me just, and I forgive me. Even though the statute I just read to you guys says nothing about gross negligence in the proximate cause, only in Michigan do you have a statute that, of course, we know who passed it, 1975, to protect kids. And only in Michigan do we have a Michigan Court of Appeals panel. In 2013, it says, even though the statute says nothing about gross negligence and governmental immunity and the proximate cause, you got to read gross negligence into the statute. So you have the Republicans, guys. I know I shouldn't say that, right? You have the Federalists. It was a Federalist court at the time who, that means just read the statute. They morph this into now I got to prove gross negligence of the proximate cause. And God forbid, if this would have happened at a private school, guess what? Straight negligence, lower standard of proof. Complete and utter, as we say in Saginaw, bullshit. Legal term.
Right. Tiffany.
Yeah. I'm with Ben on the civil issues, but on the criminal issues, I think it's a little bit more difficult. I struggle with this. I mean, he was a child. The parents. He's a child. He was 15 years old. I mean, his parents should have been reported to CPS. Something should have happened much sooner. From the school's perspective or the neighbor's perspective, as we talked about before. I really don't know what the answer is for what should happen to him in the future. I don't know that locking him up forever and ever and ever is the right way. He obviously has a lot severe mental health issues that need to be addressed, and he does need to be, taken away from society, certainly. So I'm not so sure that a jury in Oakland County is going to say no way to an insanity defense, Ben. I don't necessarily agree.
I mean, the kid's got to be crazy, man. I mean, there's just no two ways about it.
Yeah, but it's simple to say crazy. He was neglected as a child. There's a reason why he's ended up like that, and I think that it's too easy to just say like he's crazy from the outset. He was failed at every step of the way.
Yeah,
but that guy is so scary. I mean, there's a disconnect in his heart. I mean, when one of the parents was describing where his son was in the bathroom with another guy, and Ethan Crumbley just shot the guy right in the head, and then told that guy, I mean, that is some cold shit.
Alan,
and I don't want
lay down next to him. Lay down next to him.
Right. And I don't want that guy out for a long time. That's too.
I'm not saying that.
That's what. And whether it's punitive or what, I mean, it's also for the protection of society. A guy like that is really fucking scary.
Yeah.
Well, and then what if he had grown up in a house that did not have parents who were a few steps down that road themselves and armed like a small platoon going out in Vietnam? I mean, they had multiple weapons in their house, and they live in one of the safest parts of the metro area. I can't believe Oxford has any kind of significant violent crime issue to speak of, and yet they have like 1 million guns. And when you give a kid access to that kind of arsenal, that's what's going to happen, or that's what could happen. So
you're mentioning the idea about mental health and access to mental care. Governor Whitmer's State of the State speech touched on a lot of different topics. One of them was proposing an expansion of funds for mental access. Would anyone like to comment on that plank of her speech, as well as some of the other elements of the speech? What would you give her as a grade for it overall?
I think it should have happened a long time ago. Mental health should have been a part of our healthcare system for years and years and years. I think that I don't know what it was, the 80s or 90s. This almost predates me a little bit, when we closed the psychiatric hospitals in Michigan and how things like
Engler did.
Engler did.
You're right. Engler did by himself.
Yeah, well, I mean, and we suffered the results of that, and it's had a burden on our systems and on our society, and I think we see that every day. I'm glad that she did that, and I think the challenge is right now, as I will say from my clients and friends and family, is that there aren't enough counselors out there. Like, if you want job security right now in the middle of a pandemic, become a therapist, because you have more clients knocking on your door than you can handle.
You're absolutely right. I mean, there's so many therapists out there that people are willing to talk to somebody on the internet who may not even live, anywhere nearby. I mean, it's wonderful. One of the wonderful things about having children is to experience the world through their eyes. And you see things that you either never saw or forgot that you saw many years ago. My daughter is now 25 and out on her own and starting to and looking into like stuff like health insurance. And it just kills her that she has to buy a separate policy for her teeth because, dentist, she's like, why doesn't health insurance cover dentistry? I mean, is your mouth not part of your body? And it's the same with mental health. And I think what happened, Ben's right. In the 80s, a lot of the worst impulses of both Democrats and Republicans got together and had a baby called deinstitutionalization. Democrats, I mean, we had this new class of psychiatric drugs that could treat people in a better way than the old style, which was just to Thorazine them and get them in the corner and just let them drool on themselves in a mental hospital forever. But so that appealed to the idea that these people shouldn't be, institutionalized and they shouldn't be kept against their will, and civil liberties, let them out. And then the Republicans just looked at it from strictly a financial point of view. And it was a lot cheaper to set up these alleged community mental health centers and give people medication. And so we ended up with suddenly, the ones, I was living in Columbus, Ohio at the time, and suddenly the number of people that were just wandering the street, pushing a shopping cart full of, filthy belongings went from 0 to quite a few. And
that's what happened in Michigan with John Engler. I mean, it was as
happened everywhere.
It's a budgetary item simply looked at as money, and they don't realize the costs, the extra costs, the cost
right.
of like Ethan Crumbley not getting the proper mental health.
Right.
It's all over, it's terrible. And really, it goes so much beyond that. Even in the prison system, our prison system is so screwed up. It's so predictable that if somebody maxes out and they don't get good time in the state system, that means they are really an asshole prisoner. And if they're an asshole prisoner, they come out an asshole again and they commit more crimes. It's predictable. And yet there's nothing a lot of times that we can do with these people getting just pushed back out. And people say, when people get convicted of crimes, they say, good, they shouldn't even have TV. They shouldn't even be able to visit their, get visits. Screw them.
Bread
we don't
water.
care. And I say, guess what? They're coming back out
sooner or later.
Yeah.
Alan, I'm going to make it my life mission to get asshole as a verb in the Oxford English Dictionary.
As long as my picture's not next to it.
Don't worry, mate. There's no pictures on the Oxford English Dictionary. I grew up in Lapeer, and I remember that we had the Oakdale Center for the mentally infirmed. And first of all, it was responsible for basically a third of the workforce being employed. And it was like a neutron bomb when that started to close and when there were layoffs by the state during the recession in the 80s, with the final nail in the coffin provided by Engler. And, oh, yes, money then being diverted to the corrections department. So going from one area to the other. So, I mean, Alan, we were talking earlier off camera about the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which came out in 1975. How much do you think that movie then stigmatized mental health institutions?
Well, probably quite a bit. I mean, it made it certainly seem very, very scary, very, very daunting. I mean, I saw that film in Portland the second day after it premiered there, out that way, and I love that film. It's amazing, but there's a lot of horrible stuff that happens in that film. So.
Well, the irony was that everyone started calling their teachers in school Nurse Ratched.
Right.
What does that then say about how they view school?
I think it's something that needs to be woven throughout. I learned something new this week that I hadn't really thought about before, but that makes a whole lot of sense to me. And in this leadership program that we're talking about, intelligence and emotional intelligence, and then it was added to my vocabulary, body intelligence, and how like stress actually like can manifest itself in your body, and like how that pans out and things. And I think that when we're talking about mental health, it's something that should be in our school system. It's something that should be in our workplace. It's something that should be not an exception where we're talking about institutions and people that need to be put away and separated from society. But it's a day-to-day sort of thing that we acknowledge. Everybody in the world is just trying to get by like everybody else. Some have more significant differences or challenges than others, but not dealing with it and ignoring it is not actually doing any of us any good. So.
Well, you know, the Republicans say the way to deal with mental health in this pandemic is to put people to work. No lockdown, not wearing masks.
Well,
you know,
I think
that's what's making people crazy.
That's one reason that mental health is not covered by a lot of medical insurance. It's seen as, why should everybody else in this plan pay for you to go whine at your therapist that you're disappointed with your boyfriend or whatever? I mean, that's we have a very you're sick, here's a pill, get out of my office kind of approach to mental health. So
yeah, you're right.
I'd like to actually
on the governor's speech, one of the things I think it's really important for us to pay attention to is just the whole setup. I mean, I was talking with Alan about it before. One of the things that I missed about the state of the state was that there were no other people in it. You know, normally they would say, and Vin Johnson, who has been a hero fighting, and they would show a picture of Vin, you know, with his boxing gloves, you know, fighting for people up in the gallery. So we didn't have any of that, you know, this time around. And I think that the governor worked really hard to try and take away those things that have been distractions for the little teenagers, you know, middle school mindset out there on the right, who would always comment on her looks and what she wore and all this other stuff. I mean, here she is in a factory. Obviously, to me, it's the cleanest factory I've ever seen in my life.
Right. Look like a showroom, a car showroom.
What are they building there? You know? But, you know, with the purple jacket and the black turtleneck and the hair pulled back in a ponytail. And it's just sort of like, you know, it just took away all the other things that we're used to seeing with her, you know, with Big Rich.
Well, I don't know if anyone else felt this way, but when I was watching, I felt a little distracted. I kept looking and thinking, like, has this woman been taking like drama lessons or something? Everything was so accentuated, and we're going to do this. And I thought, like, wow, she must be coached on her delivery or something. I found that a little distracting.
Well, but I mean, at the same time, you know, I think that that her stuff was animated in part because we weren't distracted by the other stuff. You know what I mean? It's like when you pull your hair back, you guys are women, you can talk about this better than I can. You know, it shows more of your face, and it's I think she did everything to appear sort of regular. Now, I appreciate the governor. I think she does a great job. I was really surprised by this. I just, I mean, I thought it was cool. It just took away.
Did anybody think about telling Garland it's cold up in Marquette right now? He's going to be up there he's going to be up there the next 3 months. He's not going to be able to shovel out.
Yeah, well, that was the other thing, right? He took a picture with his mask on, and that weirdo lady from.
I was just going to say, this is the transition here. So go ahead. Okay. Go ahead, Greg.
Con, make the transition.
Yeah, make the transition.
To where?
to Michon Maddock calling him a scary masked man.
Yes. Okay. So let's talk about Michon Maddock, and who's the chair of the Michigan GOP, and some of the other foibles and distractions she has regarding the fact that the false election certification documents have been referred to authorities and prosecutors, and she's still there.
I would like to preface my comments by apologizing to all the truck stop waitresses that are insulted by comparing her to a truck stop waitress, because that's kind of what she reminds me of. But, you know, anyway, she's much meaner. I mean, most truck stop waitresses are pretty nice ladies. So anyway, I don't know. I mean, she's, you know, there's all kinds of people out there who are claiming that she's playing, you know, 9-level 3D chess by throwing out this racist tweet to distract from her legal problems around these false electors. I don't think she's that
No.
bright or that crafty. I think she's just a natural born racist. And so she throws out, so she says something about Garland Gilchrist, who at the time, he was in a car. He was wearing a mask because he had recently had COVID, and he wanted to make sure to protect the people who were with him in the car, which are probably his staff driving him somewhere while he talked on the phone and tweeted. And but some people, they just can't handle that. There's a reason those people live in Milford and not in Detroit. So she's
a skosh smarter than Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Oh, man, I don't know. Like some odds on that one.
Setting the low bar, are we, Alan?
I think it's funny, though, to watch the party tear itself apart. Not all the way apart, but fight amongst themselves over this. Because I'm reminded of, was it Napoleon who said, when your enemy is destroying themselves, let them. Yeah.
That's why I was going to say, Nancy, when you're talking, like, I hope she stays there for the next year and a half. This is, it couldn't get any better, but then again, better really is worse, right?
Yeah.
So who knows? But oh my God, if people in the middle don't figure this out, what the heck?
Yeah, I agree.
So if anyone,
that was some straight up racist stuff. She said, "Forget the N word."
Right.
She was just like, look at the scary black man with the mask on.
Well, I mean, this also echoes what Lauren Boebert said about Ilhan Omar in the elevator in Congress. I mean, here's a colleague and saying, well, I was looking to see if she had a backpack. So it seems as though they're all reading off the same script. If anyone's keeping track, Alan is now up to 2 new lexical additions. We've got asshole as a verb, and we have skosh.
There we go.
So I am.
That's a fashion word. So
it's the fact that it has greater purchase beyond just the pages of Elle and Vogue. I'm just
that skirt needs to be just a skosh longer. So.
I mean, my fashion go-to is the Devil Wears Prada, and Nigel didn't say it there, so credit to Alan on that one. So we have come to that propitious time in the show where, let's see if this will work. I will hand it over to Michael to announce.
And now it's time for Deadline Detroit's nominees for Schmuck of the Week.
Now, let me go ahead and give a disclaimer. I know that we have discussed many issues and many people who could certainly qualify for Schmuck of the Week. It does not disqualify any of them that we've already talked about them. So with that, let's go to Tiffany first.
Well, I hate that I'm even saying this woman's name, but Sarah Palin, who was in New York City for her defamation trial against the New York Times, who said she would not get vaccinated over her dead body, and then ended up with COVID and had to postpone her trial. And many restaurants prior to announcing that, but after being diagnosed.
Yeah,
if you couldn't have a better example of like what not to do, like it's her.
She's painting the town. She's really having a great time. So.
Yeah, 2 different Upper East Side restaurants, which just tells you then, if you're going to New York during COVID, get a hot dog off the cart. A lot safer, a lot more satisfying. Or as Alan said, go to Coney. Go to Coney Island.
Actually, I think that, but it raises a good question, because as I understand, they're supposed to be checking vaccination cards in every New York City restaurant. I think that's a local
vaccine and ID. You're right.
Yeah, right. And so, how the hell did she get in without one? But
so they're speculating that she included herself, and also the fine goes to the restaurant, not to the violator. So that's one of the other unfortunate elements of that. Ven, who is your Schmuck of the Week?
Well, as much as I hate calling people names, it's a tie between the lady that used the N-word and the people that didn't stand up right when she said it and correct it, because as far as I'm concerned, it's a 50-50 conspiracy theory award.
So if this was a tort action, they would be jointly and severally liable.
I would call it a civil conspiracy. Exactly.
Civil conspiracy.
That's good.
They can fight and see who indemnifies whom in that.
Right.
Okay, Nancy.
JD Vance, who exploded onto the political scene as a thinking man's Republican. You know, he published this book called Hillbilly Elegy, and it was made into a movie. And he was supposed to be, you know, the white working class whisperer. And then he decided to go into politics and run for the Senate in the neighboring state of Ohio, my native state. And he has turned into, he has not drifted to the bottom. He has dived in enthusiastically to the bottom of the pander pool. And this week he happily accepted the endorsement of Marjorie Taylor Greene. And
wow.
You know, yeah, this guy, you know, Mr. Yale, Mr. Thoughtful,
Right.
you know, thoughtful conservative is now just another piece of shit. So there you
So
go.
Nancy, you're saying Jim Jordan needed company.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. He and Jim are going to have a great time together.
Well,
so.
I think his crown for being a white working class whisperer has been replaced by Kid Rock, isn't it, Nancy?
Yeah, another fraud. You know,
And no vaccines, no masks required. By the way, Ben and Tiffany, I mean, kudos to Prince Andrew, who apparently is demanding a jury trial.
I demand a trial.
After it was
You're gonna
already
get one, homie. You're gonna
demanded
get
by
one.
the yes. It shows that the Queen's favorite son, no longer a Royal Highness now, knows so much about American law,
Right.
or at least his lawyers do.
I see on the way to the courthouse, like Cinderella's pumpkin, like re-emerging, and Andrew walks out and goes, "I'm here for trial."
So full disclosure, I met Prince Andrew at a thing in Malaysia about 11 years ago at a reception, and he is a complete tool. But what was vindication was that while he was acting all pompous, the story was breaking about how an investigative journalist went undercover and solicited a bribe or was able to get his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, to agree to a bribe of £250,000 to have an audience with the prince. And the next day he was giving the lunch keynote, and you could tell he had indigestion, and it wasn't the food. So
wow.
Kudos to
what's his defense going to be? If the panties don't fit, you must acquit.
Oh man, wait too
Oh,
soon,
my.
Greg. It's not even the discovery phase yet. But Greg, since you're on a roll, who's your schmuck of the week?
Man, I got to tell you, my schmuck of the week is Miranda on the Sex and the City sequel. I'm so disappointed in her. This just drives me crazy. I'm like, really? You've been married to this guy, and this is the way you're gonna treat him? What a schmuck! Can't stand it. My real life schmuck of the week, though, is probably not too far off, and that's that Michonne Maddox woman for her floating the conspiracy on video about kids, about the school district in Midland putting litter boxes in the bathroom so that furry kids can use it. I'm like, really? I mean, she's just batshit crazy, man. I don't understand. I mean, it's like, seriously, I'm with Vin because I'm a Democrat and I want to see Democrats sweep. And so the more crazy that's out there coming from her is like good. But at the same time, you want to go, oh, the humanity.
Especially try to claim that was happening in Midland is simply ridiculous. I mean, Washtenaw County, maybe, but
Ann Arbor.
I will say on that Sex and the City show, Greg, like I hate it, but I can't stop. Like
I am with you. I am with you 100%. I am hate watching it. It is so bad that I have to I have to see how bad it's going to be this week. And
ladies, that's the only way that you know how to critique it if you watch it. So I get it.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
I think it's part of nostalgia. Sex and the City was on when I was in college, and so now I have like cross-country calls with my college roommates that we watch the original version of about how much we hate the new.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, at least in the new version, you got black people.
Well, and that's the
it's
thing.
hard to like them.
It's like every single supporting part outside of the core characters is now played by, it's like, hi, I'm Gene Eric Ethnic, and I am your new, your new best friend. You know,
Right.
Hi, I'm
right.
your
I mean,
transgender
Sex and the
kid.
City used to be so white that even the doorman was white, but now it's like, it's like,
Come on, Greg. Come on, Greg.
I'm just saying.
I'm a license.
You're not wrong.
Yeah.
This is the first time in the history of the show.
I mean, I'm fiending because Alan Lingo and I's favorite show is the season finale happened, you know.
Curb.
What is that, Alan?
Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yeah, Curb Your Enthusiasm. You know, people are always looking at me and they're going like, how can you vibe with this like 70-year-old white Jewish dude? I'm like, because he's hilarious. And they have black people in it. His roommate is black.
Right, Leon. Yeah.
Leon, my man.
I met Leon at the JB Smoove at the soundboard, and at the start of the show, they played a lot of clips from Curb Your Enthusiasm. So afterwards, I say, "Hey, did Curb Your Enthusiasm really help your show, help your career?" And he looks at me, and I go, "I bet you helped Larry's career." He goes, "You got that right."
Well,
I hate him in those stupid gambling commercials.
Yeah.
They suck. But.
Yeah.
Let's move
Greg,
on.
I mean, I think you're literally the first person on this show who's ever used or invoked a fictitious character as Schmuck of the Week. So you've kind of
breaking my heart, man.
You've definitely opened the door. And by the way, Nancy, Greg, I mean, you guys privilege places like Ann Arbor and Washtenaw County for deviant acts. What about K-Pac? Do you think that people in the Thumb don't roll that way?
Hey. Now we're getting close to home.
When I believe
I grew up in Lapeer.
Like
I know.
I believe the school is closed now, but they used to have an alternative high school in Ann Arbor called Community High
or Commie High. Yeah,
Commie High, and it was like, you know, it was for all the misfits, and it was a great school. I mean, all the schools in Ann Arbor were great, but
yeah, I think it was modeled on Berkeley, a high school out in California.
Yeah, but somebody casually referred to it as Communist Martyrs High School, which just cracked me up.
That was after the movie Red Dawn came out. Alan.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. All right. I'm going to go to the McKinn County School Board, but board member Tony Allman, the board voted 10-0 to ban the book Mouse by Art Spiegelman, and it's a graphic novel telling the story about his parents in Poland and their experience in Auschwitz, and it's done. The Jews are mice, and the Nazis are cats, and it's a very educational. It won a Pulitzer Prize, the only graphic novel to win a Pulitzer Prize, and it's been banned. And he goes, and he was concerned about scenes in the book where mice were hung from trees and children were killed. Well, welcome to the Holocaust. You know, it's right. It's
exactly.
Like, you know, you know what? I mean, we're sanitizing everything. I mean, slavery, there were horrible things that happened in slavery. Should kids not learn about slavery, about the history of this country, of the world? But anyway, it reminds me that they're trying to sanitize that. When I was at the Washington Post, I covered a Nazi rally in front of the Israeli embassy. And they were chanting the neo-Nazis and the skinheads. They were all chanting. They were pretending to be demonstrating on behalf of the Palestinians, which the Palestinians want nothing to do with them. But they were chanting, "Freedom for Palestine, a rope for every Finkelstein." So I put that in my story. And my editor, it was a Saturday, the editor who was black, she said, "No, we can't put that in." And I go, "Why not?" She goes, "It's too inflammatory." And I said, "You sent me to a Nazi rally. What are you expecting?" What? It's a Nazi rally. We can do that. And she goes, "Oh no, that's just way too inflammatory." And we went at it for about 10 minutes. I finally gave up, but
well, Alan, you know who's more inflammatory than that is those Illinois Nazis.
Oh yeah, I hate the Illinois Nazis.
Yeah, hate the Illinois Nazis. So there's your Blues Brothers
yes
reference for today. Well,
I mean, they banned that book, but did they keep this one? Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. I mean, you want to talk about some depressing shit? You want to talk about some scenes? Read this. But it's got meaning. These are important books for an important time.
No, depressing Greg
never forget.
Depressing Greg is the fact that for the first time in Michigan history, the death rate outpaced the birth rate in 2020. So perhaps something to go ahead and talk about next week. Well, Alan, you mentioned as Schmuck of the Week the McKinn County School Board. I suppose it would be good to offset that with a Mensch of the Week of a similar kind. The Hamtramck City Council, the only all-Muslim city council in the United States, issuing a resolution condemning anti-Semitism on the heels of Holocaust Remembrance Day. So kudos to Hamtramck for something more than just punchki.
Right. Very nice.
There. So my Schmuck of the Week, and there are so many that we've already discussed, but in order to be a bit unique, is Candace Owens. Apparently cannot stand the fact that Disneyland Paris, as part of their, I think, 30th anniversary, had commissioned Stella McCartney, she being the daughter of the one of only two remaining Beatles, Paul McCartney, to have a new makeover for Minnie Mouse, getting her out of the red polka dot dress and into a pantsuit. Apparently, the fact that Hillary Clinton wasted no time in endorsing the fashion shift. And what was that word that you used there, Alan?
Skosh.
So not having to worry about taking up Minnie's hemline, a skosh, or dropping it, but the fact that she's now in a pantsuit. Candace Owen has found nothing else to inveigh about, and in her quixotic quest of finding all things problematic with liberals and the degradation that they allegedly are providing to society, this was her screed. So Candace Owens.
Can I just pile on and say this is also this week was Tucker Carlson melting down over the green M&M's shoes, changing from high heels to somewhat lower block heels. What is it with conservatives and tunes? I mean, I really want to know, because I feel like one of these days I'm going to walk into the wrong club and open a door and I'm going to see something that I cannot unsee. So
who was there with the Teletubby? Somebody had an issue with that too.
Oh, Jerry Falwell.
Jerry Falwell.
Tinky Winky and the purse. Tinky Winky was purple. By the way, really interesting article about Jerry Falwell Jr.
Yes,
in Vanity Fair. Apparently says that whole evangelical thing was a ruse. That's not how I roll. And who knew that Jerry Falwell's son would have more in common with Larry Flint than with his dad?
He's a cuck. He's a cuckold. I mean, a proud cuckold. Yeah.
The Righteous Gemstones a documentary? Is that what you're saying?
Ooh. Yeah, as soon as you said Jerry Falwell, I was thinking because of the Atlantic article, I was thinking about him drinking like a whole bottle of NyQuil to get high before he went to bed. I was like, yeah, that's a weird family, man.
By the way, I don't mean to kink shame there. So if Tucker Carlson, you're into the green M&M, ooh boy, anyway.
Well, Greg, he had to drink it because no one gave him a spoon and a lighter. Yeah, because that's how NyQuil really goes. So,
how do you know about that, man? You be getting down with some serious stuff there.
I think it was on Double Jeopardy maybe 3 nights ago. I don't know.
You know what? How did Lee Chatfield get by us this week? Speaking of kinks, we got to mention him at least one time.
Yeah.
Right. I thought we'd save that for the indictment because that's going to be coming up. So,
man, how do you even get this? When I first saw the headlines, it was like sister-in-law, Sue's brother-in-law.
They were adults, Greg. They were adults at the time.
Yeah, they were
married to different people apparently, but hey, they were adults.
Yeah.
I thought she was a kid when it started.
Well, allegedly she was, but you can't make this shit up, y'all. He doth protest too much.
Yes. Very much so.
Wow.
It's always the ones that say the most shit, right? And then they end up in a bathroom stall, hooking up with a 14-year-old boy. It's like
right. Exactly. Unbelievable. I can't wait to. That's going to be really interesting.
Well, in Michigan, doesn't the age of consent vary by area code?
Oh man, this is a lively show today.
That's a good one.
Saeed, was Lapeer 517 like Saginaw was? I just want to know.
No. We were once 313. We were then 810, and now I suppose we could go either way. But
we were 517 and turned into 989. So I don't know what that means.
There's something sexual about it. You are 989 now because they're trying to make everybody in that area be transgender.
Oh,
that's what's happening.
No, furry.
989. Can't you see it? The numbers.
One of these days, you guys asked me to be back on when we discussed this. Just this entire problem with these transgender kids that want to play sports on the other way, because I find it so like, what the fuck are we talking about?
Okay,
some problem that I don't know about that you guys haven't told me about, or what?
We'll put that on the agenda for next time. For
Thank
obviously,
you. We have to have legislation against it, don't we?
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Whatever you say, Ven. For this show, certainly went on 5 minutes too long. With that, I'd like to thank you, Ven Johnson, Greg Bowens, Tiffany Ellis, Nancy Derringer, and the last word, of course, to Alan.
Drive home safely.
Thanks so much, everybody.